So Rabbi Bar Rav Chanan Havaragil Da'ate Martivim Humedita. So we're talking about cases of Tchum, and so somebody's moving from city to city, and the question is, how to so Rabbi Bar Chanan is to go from the city of Martivim to the city of Humedita, two cities in Babel that are sent this apart. So how would he do this? Because they appear to be more than 2,000 amot apart. So Amar. Hey, Shviratim at Sinta. He said, I'm resigning for Shabbos in Sinta. So which is located in the middle of the two tzlums, and that way you'd be able to go to both locations. So I'm Relay Abaye, my data. So what do you mean by this? How's this going to work? Rabbi Yehuda, so how is he able to, to say that I'm going to be residing in Sinta? I haven't gone there, done anything else. When we have the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda about can you say that I'm residing in such and such place? So he said that's only allowed for a poor person to say that, and that so like that's the exact point of the machlokes. Like why are you saying that you're saying about Ploni like in that city? So Harab Nachman talking about day, but did Rabbi Nachman explain the machlokes differently? And so therefore, you can't simply say that I'm residing there. You have to actually, make an eruv. You're right. Rav Chanan said, you're right. I really should, make sure to set up my eruv before Shabbos. If I were to do that, I can't simply say I'm going to reside in. Amar Rabbi Bar Chama, Hare Amru Shavat Yeshlo Arba. Okay. So now we dealt with that story about how can you simply say that I'm allowed to. Because it would say that my place I'm residing in is there. The answer is you can't really. So Amar Rabbi Bar Chama, Hare Amru Shavat Yeshlo Arba Amot. So Rabbi Bar Chama said that someone who establishes, who says that I'm now staying here for Shabbos, Yeshlo Arba Amot, he gets the lot Amot where he is, and then which is weird because normally right. So we're talking. He gets Dalet Amot in terms of carrying, and then he gets 2,000 surrounding in regards to Tchum. So the question. So we understand in general you get Dalet Amot around the location, as well as getting 2,000 where you're allowed to walk. The question is, if there's somebody who set up an Erev Tchumen, so how does that work? What do they get? So Yeshlo Ramot Allah. Do they have Dalet Amot around the Erev, or do they only have or do they have similar 2,000, right? So is it 2,004, or is it the distance, or is it just 2,000 from the location of the Erev itself? So I'm a Rabbi Tashman, so try to figure this out. So if you don't get the Dalet Amot, here's the issue. So in general, we say that making an Erev with bread makes it easier on you, right? To make it easier on the person who has the means, so he won't have to go out and do it himself. To bring the Tchum and the bread to his location to reside there. If you're saying that you're supposed to make it easier, then if he loses some distance, then it's actually a chumrah. It's not just a kula. But no, that's not really good proof because 4 amot isn't that big of a deal. You'd rather lose those 4 extra amot and instead not have to walk and put your Erev outside before Shabbos. So now we've got a new Mishnah. So Mishiyatza lelech ba'ir shemar b'ba v'yafsiro chaviro umutar lelech v'chol b'nei ha'ir asurin. So the person that left on Erev Shabbos to go to a city that has an Eruv, and another person made him, go back home, and he's allowed to go to the place of the Eruv, but other people in the city cannot. He says whoever could have made an Eruv, meaning he said that he's not staying in one place and so going somewhere else. But in the end, he did not. He ends up being a donkey driver and a camel driver at the same time, pulled the directions, and then you get stuck with nothing because you didn't fully determine your location for Shabbos. So now the Gemara asks, "My shna ihu, my shna inhu." Right. So what's the difference between the person who established his person who's heading another city versus the people in the city? Why are they getting different tchums? Like, what's going on here? So, Amar Huna Hachamai is the case. Yon sheish lo shnei batim v'nehem shnei tchumei Shabbat. The case is that the person who say can go to the city, he's somebody who already owns a home in another place. Therefore, he can simply switch the place of residence without having to do anything else. Because when you're making the error, you're taking the bread and say that I'm residing there for Shabbos. But if you're literally residing there already, then like you don't need to do the whole Eruv thing. So you own two homes, so you don't even need to set up an Eruv. And that's why. So like, as in he was trying to set up an Eruv to make it so everybody else could come, could come as well. But he didn't succeed, so then he's alone, was allowed to go, nobody else. Alternatively, another option is since he already left, so he is considered to be a poor person, and therefore we can say that I'm residing in a given location, whereas everybody else is considered to be rich because they're residing in a home, and therefore they can't do that. And he, since he's heading out, is considered to be a poor person. Sorry. So we have similar statement about to support the person who has two homes. So somebody has two homes, and there's two different tchumei Shabbat that between them. So kevan shehizik b'derech kana ered v'er b'Yehuda. So as soon as he went and left to head towards point B, that's sufficient. Israel Cain, Amar Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, even more so said Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda. Filu matzol chaverov Amar lo lin po et kamahu et sinahu l'machar mashkim b'holech. So, and even more so, Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda said, even if your friend stopped on the way and said, sleep here because it's very hot or it's very cold. Therefore, you shouldn't head out. So, because you set out and had in mind to move to the second location, that's sufficient to determine your location. Amar Rabba, Lamar, Kule Amalo Pligi Ditzarech, Kipligi Lahachzik. So said that everyone agrees that you would need this, because otherwise, at any given point, you could always say that, the person turns around or stops going somewhere, that they change their mind, don't undo their Eruv. The question is whether or not he had to have started in that way. Like, did he have to start on the journey or not? Is it enough that he had that when person also has he resolves himself, or does he actually have to start the journey in order for it to go into effect? Rav Yosef Amar Lahachzik, Techule Alma Lo Pligi Ditzarech, Pligi Lomar. Rav Yosef says, no, you have to at least, start getting out. And that way, because everybody agrees at least that's needed, but the question is, you have to say, I'm residing at my other house. So like that, that's how Rav Yosef would say, but right, but Rav said is opposite. Is all that you don't need to actually say anything. The question is just whether or not you actually had to go out. Okay, come on, Azla Hadamar. So come on, Azla Hadamar Ula. So whose opinion does Ula says follow? Misha Hefzik Baderek Ves Yirach Aviro Harehu Mukhzar Umuzak. So Ula says that a person, went out to head to the second location, and somebody persuaded him to go home, and then he's considered as if he's both somebody who returned and somebody who set out. So what does that mean? Wait, so which one is it? Is he, residing at his home originally, or it's the second place he was heading? Like, which one is it? Like, I don't understand. Let's re-explain. So, even though he has functionally returned to his first home, his muchzak is about that he's at his second home. Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda. It's like Rav Yosef stated that that once you set out, that's enough to determine your status, And according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says that even if you were stopped midway, you don't need to do you do not need to hit anything. That's still sufficient. Rabbi Yehuda bar Ishtata, Aiti le Kalkala, the Peri, Larav, Natam Baroshi. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda bar Ishtata, for basket of fruit, for Nashim Baroshaya. Okay, this is presumably done on Shabbat. So, Kiava Azil, Shavke ad Nachit Darga. So, and then as he was going there, we're not done on the way back. So he left him until he went down one step and said, "Amalei BAYT, I'm reside here." Malachar Kadin Bazil, come on, Rav Yosef, Alima, Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda. Right. So basically, so a story happened at one time. Right, Rav Yehuda had brought fruit to Baroshia in another town, and then as he was leaving, right, so he let him take a step out. That way, he would have his close to the city that he was heading towards, right, where he's planning on being Rajabis. And then he said, by the way, stay for the night because it's maybe because it's too hot, too cold, and then that way, the Rabbi Yehuda was able to simply get up and go. So who does this follow? Come on, now run on my bet. Rav Yosef, believe it, Rav Yosef, Bar Yehuda. Rather, so who this is according to Rav Yosef and according to Rav Yosef, Bar Yehuda, that you have to have both have set out. You have set out, but you don't need to have stated anything in order to determine your residence for purposes of Tzom Shabbos. Again, because if you didn't need, why needs to wait for him to take a step? It must be that the taking the step is an essential part. The fact he doesn't ask him to say anything else implies that, well, that's all he had to do, take that one step. But no, Rabba believed Rav Yehuda. No, you would say it could be according to the opinion of Rabba, according to Rav Yehuda, and that maybe he had him also say that he's heading there, it wasn't that he had simply taking a step, but also that he had declared it. Okay, so that's the question. Which one do you need? Do you need both? You need both? And then we have to leave it unresolved. Do you need to both take a step and walk or not? Omar Kol Shiakol Arev. Right, and then whoever made error and then didn't follow through, he ended up being stuck. The person who was stopped on the journey, he gets stuck. So Hani Tanina Chadazimna. So wait, didn't we already know this? That if you are stuck in the that if you're stuck in the middle, that if you have yet to determine fully where your area of Shlom is, you're going to end up being a Chamar Kamal, right? Pulled in directions. Stuck in a rock and a hard place. So Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Omrim, Safek, right? So in the case of doubt, right, where if you're not sure which Shlom was set up first or which one you ended up doing, right? When two people set up an error for you, or the like. So, and similarly, remainder of Yehuda will say you're a Chamar Kamal, right? Directions you get no, and you'll end up getting the smallest possible error. Might even be no error. So, or it might even be no tlum in the end. So, Amar Sheshes Lo Tema Tama Rabbi Meir Safek Erev Safek Lo Erev Devech Chamar Kamal Aval Vadai Lo Erev Lo Havech Chamar Kamal. For Sheshes says no, that's not really the case. And remember, Meir reviewed in the case of the fake. That's because you're not sure if you made an error or not. That's why you're stuck. Because you definitely didn't make an error. If you're not stuck, you simply default back to 2000. Right to your 2000, meaning to the city that you started to Shabbos in, and that's it. Rather, what must you state? That if you had definitely not made an error, that's when you're a Chamar Kamal. You see, in this case, the guy who set out and had set up there, the he's considered to be a chamar kama, which implies that that's going to be the issue. Okay, so it's not that it's not based on the case of doubt, rather it's also based on the case of if you haven't properly set up an Eruv, according to this opinion, you'll also end up being stuck. Okay, so now again, you're doing a lot of Mishnah today. So Mishiyatza chutz l'tchum afilu ama'achat lo yikanes. So a person who steps outside of the tchum, even one amma cannot go back inside. Rabbi Eliezer Omer shtayim yikanes shalosh lo yikanes. So if somebody goes outside of the tchum, even one amma can't go back in. But religion says that if you go outside two, you can go back in. Three, you cannot. So again, this case came up earlier. How do we say that when we were trying to explain at what point have you how tchum works, and when you're forcibly removed by non-Jews or by a spirit takes over you, be an actual spirit or a basically just like lose your mind for a bit or your thoughts. We mentioned that if you're within the opinion there that if you walk 2 amot out, so you can still go back in, because basically when you leave the tchum, you get dalet amot again with you in the middle of them, which means that if you're only 2 amot outside of the tchum, you can actually still walk back in. If it's 3, then that's no good, because according to the opinion, who allows you to both to say you will have dalet amot, but that's only if when you measure that only counts from you at the center. You can't suddenly decide to like redraw your dalet amot to allow you to allow even 3 or 4 to get you back inside. So Amar Rabbi Chanina, Raglo achat b'toch hatzum, raglo achat chos hatzum, loikanes uktiv, im tashiv mishabat raglacha, raglacha ktiv. Okay, so Rabbi Chanina says, so what if somebody's 1 foot in and 1 foot out? Right, they're doing the hokey pokey, right? So what do we say about that person? So he says you can't go in. Why? Because it says im tashiv Shabbat raglacha, right? If you turn away your feet because of Shabbat in Yeshayahu, so what does that mean? And what is, even though raglacha is plural, right? So it's written, right? But it's written it could be read raglacha. So because of that, could be written raglacha, it means that even if you had 1 foot outside, that you're stuck. So clearly he is not. That would be supporting the Tanakama, not Rabbi Eliezer. The Hatanya, raglo achat b'toch hatzum, raglo achat chos hatzum yikanes. Wait, another bread is saying the exact opposite. It's not like which one is it? Amani acherim he. Rather, they would have said that. Who stated that opinion? It's somebody else. Opinion of acherim. The Tanya, as we learned in the Breita, acherim omrim l'makom sherubo hu nizkar. So as we learned in the Breita, that where does he go? According to acherim, is it goes according to the majority of your body is. So meaning if you stepped out with only your foot, that would be fine. But if let's say you'd already you took your step and you lean your body forward already, then you'd be stuck. So is there any other way to interpret this? So you could Amar Rabbi Chanina, Raglo Achav B'toch Hatzum, Raglo Achav Chos Hatzum Mikanes. So now we have an entirely different version of Rabbi Chanina's opinion. Again, same thing, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. That's the Im Nashiv B'Shabbat Raglacha. But now it says Raglacha Karinan. Your darshan is based on the Kray, not the Ktiv. In this case, because we read it as plural, that means that you have to have had both feet outside of the tchum in order for you to have a problem. If you have 1 foot in, 1 foot out, that would still be okay. So then Tanya lo yikanes. Wait, then what about the other bread that says you can't go in? Hu da'amar kacher. The one that says you can't go in, that one follows the cherim, who said Tanya limkom rubo hu nizkar. That person is attributed to the place where majority of his body lies. And that's that. Okay, so now we're back to the Mishnah.
Just one quick question on this before we move on. So, we're talking about going out of the tchum because you don't know what you're doing exactly. So on the same basis, you could bring yourself back into the Tchum because you didn't even know you'd left. What's your status if you come back in when you're not supposed to? You've gone too far out. You come back in. What do you have now?
So you're still stuck with only with Dalet Amo.
Even within the Tchum.
Correct. You get restuck. What was I was gonna. So I don't know if I showed this to everybody. There's a second. There's a PowerPoint. I just wanted to open quickly just to show you like there's certain places they used to. Here, this was pointed out to me. My friend of mine, Alex Kaminsky. Here, so let me just share this one bit. Just we're mentioning, walking outside of the Tchum, and you only notice right then and there. So here we go. I'm sharing. So can everybody see this? Can you see my screen right now?
It's coming. There we go. Yes.
Okay, so do you see what this is?
Some archaeology.
Right. So this is a stone found near Gezer in Israel. So you see here that this is upside down. I mean, the right side up is the Greek, but that's not helping anybody here. Let's read these. So
it's all Greek to me, Rabbi.
Yeah. But then you see the Hebrew upside down. You see this is there's a taf, a chet, and a mem. And then you see there's like a gimel.
Yeah.
Right. Then there's a zayin and a resh. So it's saying Tchum Gezer. Where the city of Gezer ends.
Ah.
So the question is this actually a Tchum marker for the purposes of Erev Tchumen, or is it a marker for purposes of Shemitah? I'm telling you where the city limit ends, so in terms of like what status it has in terms of Shemitah. Like, is this so you can know when you follow the laws that would apply together as opposed to the next city in terms of time to get rid of the various fruits, or in terms of like certain differences in halakha in different parts of Israel, which again, the shir on Shemitah, don't worry about it. But again, it's not interesting. So you could have just literally like you could have walked like just stepped right over the line and be like, you're like, oh, what a nice right, and then then you're like, now do I do? So that's what we'd be talking about.
Okay, so what we're saying is even if you come back, you still only have the Dalet Amos.
According to the Tanna Kama and what we're discussing now, Rabbi Eliezer would say it's still fine. But according to the Tanna Kama that we're discussing, it means that even if you had entered, you won't fix the problem, because the issue is that when you left, you lost your Tchum, and if you came back in, you don't get it again. But we mentioned the solution to this, if this ever happens to you, is that you're supposed to wait to go to the bathroom. And the Chaim Mechoz's trick that if you have to go to the bathroom, then you're allowed to go more than your Dalet Amo. So therefore, you'd then be allowed to then just make sure you go to the bathroom inside the Tchum, and you'd be good.
Because once you're in for that reason, then you've got the full city again.
Correct. Once you're in for a bunch of reasons, then it's allowed. But if you went in B'Isser, then you'd be stuck B'Isser, and you'd be have to just basically sit there till the end of Shabbos.
Got it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Excellent. Good question. And thanks for reminding me to show that. So, okay.
Compliments to your friend as well.
Yeah. Okay. So right. So now we're entering the next. Okay. So we're gonna hopefully we'll be able to finish the party today. So okay. So now we're back to Rabbi Eliezer opinion about you're allowed two outside is good and 3 is not. So again, the definition here is much shorter than we had earlier because we discussed it earlier. So Tanya. So can you really walk 2 then 3? You can walk 2 and then come back in. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Achat Yikanes, Shtayim Lo Yikanes. So another way to say, actually, 1 you can go back in, but 2 you can't. Lo Kasha, Hada Akar Chada, Makam Tarti, Hada Akar Tarti, Makam Atlat. So what's going on here, right? So rather we're saying is this is a case where you moved in stages, right? So first thing you did is that at the beginning you moved only 1 outside of the Tchum, and then therefore you get 1 more you can go. If you move 2, then that's no good. But once you've moved 2 in addition to that 1, now it's 3, and therefore it's no good. You have Hatanya Rabbi Lezer Omer Filu Amma Achad Lo Yikanes. But what about another way that Rabbi Lezer said even if you went one amma outside the Chum, you can't enter. Kitanya Hi Lemodeh. That's in regards to when you're measuring the city limits. But now, as we learned in the Mishnah, Lemodeh Shamru Notin Lo Apply Mama Filu Sof Mirato Kaleb Mara. They're saying, while someone is measuring, you when somebody's measuring his limit by counting steps, he gets exactly 2,000, and then even if it ends in the middle of the cave, you have to stop where it is. So even if you do 2,000 amo reach, let's say the beginning of a city or the beginning of a large cave structure, like you reach the home, as far as you'd be stuck halfway through, you can't go all the way. As far as the, I guess we'll get to this later, but the 2 not 3 is also because when we say that you get 2 amo surrounding you, right? So why does it say 2 and not 2 and a little? Because when we are measuring the area, we say you gain the corners. So your 2 amo one direction really ends up becoming 2.8. That's why if you move 2, it would be okay, but 3 no good because actually the distance is actually somewhere in the middle between 2 and 3. Okay, so we'll get more into that later, I believe, but just I figured I'd mention it while we're there. Okay, so now we have again last little Mishnah here. So so somebody got dark and they're outside of the tchum, even though if they're only 1 amma outside of the tchum when Shabbos arrives, they can't go inside. Rabbi Shimon Omer, afilu chamesh esrei amot yikanes, she'ein hamashochot mematzin et midot b'bnei atoin. So Rabbi Shimon says, no, even if you're 15 minutes outside of the tchum, that's okay because the surveyors never measured it precisely because they knew that they wanted to give you a buffer zone when you made a mistake. So right. So that's why. So when they put the wall up, they put the wall up less precisely because they wanted to give people a chance to be if they made a mistake, they wouldn't be that they could still go back in. So Gemara says Tanam mipnei toei hamida. So what does that mean? It means those who made a mistake in it doesn't mean that they're worried about. So the Beit is reinterpreting not that it's that we're worried that people will forget and go outside of the tchum and then be like, oh shoot, I made a mistake, and then want to turn around. Rather, it's because the surveyors, so they wanted to make sure that they could have made a mistake here or there when they're measuring, so they would always trim off 15 amot off the end. That way even if they made a mistake, nobody would accidentally violate tchumen on because of their bad measuring. Similar to the concept will say of of the why are like the 18 minutes on our Shabbos? It's like so because you don't need 18 minutes. Like that's that. So what? Right? So technically, we're davening mincha after you lit candles already. How does that go? How's it working? It's because we don't want you to wait till the last second because there's always something that'll come up, and then you don't want you to have violated and
it's a fence of sorts, isn't it? Really?
Correct. It's again there. It's like a fence midrabanan ish, but it's just not quite. But it's a little bit later. It's not like it doesn't have the force of the midrabanan, but it's the minhag in a similar vein in order to help make sure that people are doing it properly. So Hadran Allah mi shotzi. We return to the parak of who was removed us. So somebody was removed from the so let's do a parak recap. But we're also again the parak started talking about somebody who was forcibly removed from the tchum and how that works. Do you have your original tchum, or you have this tchum that you're taking towards? So in that we pretty much concluded that you would end up getting just the tchum where you are of that. Well, yes, you you would not get the new tchum, but the question is, would you get only Dalet Amud, or you even get all the walls around you? That was like the first machlok we dealt with. But the question is, if the non-Jews then returned you, or if whatever had come over you returned you, so does that mean that you go back to your new tchum, your original tchum or not? We said yes, that means that you would. We discussed the case of we discussed ways of measuring your tchum, different, whether it should be a circle or whether or not it should be a square. We believe that it's supposed to be a square. As far as how you will determine the cardinality of that square, we will get to in the coming prakim. By coming prakim, I mean literally next parak. Don't really believe that. Back, this is a very nice charts next parak. So lots of fun. And regarding the right, so we discussed how when you get the corners, really you get 2,000 times square root of 2, which is all approximate to be 1.4, and that's so being meaning that so it's being 2,800. So as opposed to just 2,000, so again we said that if you are forcibly removed, you can go back, and you're also forcibly brought back in. That works. We also discussed the case of other solutions. One solution we had, which I mentioned already today, that of you have to go to the bathroom, and once you're allowed to leave, once you're allowed to enter again, for permission, you're allowed to enter. You're fine. Then there's another suggestion we went through. Question: are you allowed to make a human wall or not to allow people to come back in? We discussed the case of we supposed to be in Rabbi Eliezer, who says that you get that because you get a Dalet Amud when you leave the tchum, therefore, and so Rabbi Eliezer says it's centered around you. Therefore, if you're within two amot, you can come back right back in. But 3, you're no good. And we were talking about if it's getting dark, how are you supposed to set up your tchum? What are you supposed to do? Under what conditions are you allowed to say my tchum is in location B versus location A? All right, so then are you allowed to say the difference between saying makom ploni, which we said is the most problematic formulation, which we said is a problematic formulation unless you're considered to be an ani at the time. Discuss the case of whether you say if you said I'm residing in a place that's too large, like by the base of the tree versus by its trunk, versus saying talk on the Elon, or talking together there underneath the tree or the fence, because that's simply too large an area, which would mean that would be problematic. We mentioned what happens if you happen to have suddenly realized you haven't used it as a tchum. Is that sufficient or not? Is the fact that when you are asleep, when you get the tchum of the city, if you get a tchum at all, if you fell asleep, or you need to actually be awake for it to happen. If you fell asleep and not realize you're within the tchum, can you use that tchum or not? And we had also discussed. We also had the drush about the source of tchumen of source of tchumen, about why it's 2,000 amot, and we went over the discussion of is it d'oraita or is it midrabanan, right? Whether again, the options being there's Rabbi Akiva's opinion that everything is learned from our Eruvin, 2,000 amot and everything else, and therefore all of tchumen is midoraita. Then there is the middle, right? So we don't pass on Rabbi Akiva. And so instead we have the interim opinion of the Rambam and many others. For full list, please see the article I sent out where I list who says what. Based on the Rishami that you have Yud Bey's meal, you have 12, so essentially 12 kilometers, so similar to how it was when the Jews were in the desert. That's how big the encampment was. So therefore, you would end up getting. So you get 12 amodas midoraita. The midrabanan they fixed it to be 2,000. So the drush that we had in our parak here about it being 2,000 amot was actually about was actually a smach. That's not a true source. So it's just how so there's right. So again, so the direct of 12 of your male, and the midrabanan is is the 12,000. And then we also had the other option is that simply the whole thing is Midrash, the whole concept of Shalom. And then that's so, and then therefore every time when you see it, it looks like it's all right. So it's really, except for excuse me, if you don't pass, like every one of those drashot that you'll end up seeing is really an asmata or referring to something else. And yeah, so that and then that I think that's pretty much all the topics covered. And then then again we have the reasons behind tefillin, which I'll just mention briefly once again. So either the reason why we're not supposed to go so far for the tefillin is because it's too much of a tircha, right? It's too much effort, or that right. So that's the opinion of the Sefer Chinuch. Then there's the opinion of the Rambam that that's very negative. And others understand as well. We have the opinion of the Aruch HaShulchan. The problem is that if you spent all day walking, you would not be on it. If you want time to actually do the proper mitzvah of on Shabbos, such as learning Torah, which you would miss out on. And then I suggested the alternative that might be that part of one of the reasoning behind why tefillin is a concept is based off of the fact that it's based off of the Digli Midbar, that just like in the desert, it's a unique experience that you're supposed to have for Shabbos. So similarly, when each of us are determining our locations for Shabbos, you have to be very clear as to where is your tefillin on Shabbat, and that's the place you're going to spend Shabbos with, and the experience you will have there. And then again, I guess and then the last little bit was a question of what's the mechanism that you work for that works for Erev Tefillin. Erev Tefillin work based on regel, or does it work based on pot? Right? I mean, so is it when you're saying you're making your Erev Tefillin based on a given location? Is that working by means of you physically residing there? That's just the determinant, or is the determinant based on the you place, and that's what the operating mode is, and that's how you determine your home is? Is it based on your feet, or is it based on your bread? But those are that's the technical mechanism to allow you to get to the that would allow it to work, as opposed to the Tommy and the reason I mentioned before, which were more of the what is the general feel you'll get from it.
Rabbi, I'm reluctant to ask for this because I'm not on the same level as my fellow Talmidim, but it would benefit me greatly if you slow down your speech. Like I think you're talking 100 kilometers an hour, and I'm listening at 50 kilometers an hour.
That's fine. I'll go slower. My apologies. Yes.
I don't have the background. So sometimes if I miss a word, I don't know if I missed an Aramaic word or you just said it so quickly that I didn't hear it, and then I fall behind. So
okay.
Michael, it would help us all.
If you would try that.
I will try and slow myself down, and if you ever notice that I'm speeding up, just ask me a question and then I'll slow back down. Okay.
Yeah,
I think we appreciate asking about a particular word as well. There's no
correct. If you missed a word too, also you can ask that.
What was that? Because
yeah, but I would have to interrupt you a lot. It's really quite a change. Like it's like almost every word has to be more articulated, because you know what I mean. I think it's a natural way of speaking. In
correct.
It's one way, but in a bigger group, it's a little harder. The other thing that would help me, frankly, is sometimes I don't because I don't have the background, I don't know the problem that the Chachamim are trying to solve. So I'm missing the context. So if you're missing the context, then sometimes I'm in the details and I'm kind of lost in the details, and I don't understand. And so I can't think of any specific example.
So maybe even, Rabbi, this summary that you gave at the end, which might have been useful at the beginning. Put everything into context. I'm sorry, I've got to run, but just like a summary at the beginning, just to say what we're trying to accomplish, and then move on from there.
Okay, so let me to start with
the summary was excellent, but it might have helped at the beginning.
Okay, so let me start with a summary, as opposed to finishing with a summary.
But think 100 kilometers an hour down to 50, because I'm listening at 50 and you're talking at 100.
Right. Okay. I'll do my best to slow down my speech then. Okay.
All right. Go ahead. Thank you.
Rabbi, you got my email?
I got your email, Ali. Thank you. I'm going to send that out also. Ali,
it may be helpful for everybody because there's general principles in there that are applied to the Toronto area. So
you'll be able to see the Eruvin come alive right around you.
Yeah.
All right. All right, Chaim, thank you.
Okay, Shkoch.
Have a good
All right,
day.
thank you.
Michael, Shkoch, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
You're not the only one. I'm on Michael's side.
Okay. I'll do my best to enunciate and be clearer. Not to worry.
Chaim, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Shkoch, Rabbi.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Have a good one.